Good day, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. I don't know where you are in the world right now, but welcome to Soul Empowerment. This is episode number 43. And my name is David McLeod. I am your life mastery coach and one of the leaders and hosts of this program. So, welcome. And today, our topic is called Sticks and Stones. And I'm not going to go into that just yet because we're going to have a lot of fun with it. But first, I want to have my co-hosts have a chance to introduce themselves. And I'm going to start with you today, Scott.
Hey, everybody. Scott Holmes, Reiki Master, Polarity Therapist, and really enjoying this panel. For everybody who is viewing this or will view it, these are fascinating people, and you really need to hear what they have to say.
Okay, well, thank you, Scott. And let's just watch the audience just fill up because of that. Thank you so much. We got to invite them in. That's great. And next on my screen today, I'm going to call upon you, Gail. Introduce yourself, say hello, tell us where you are.
Hello. I'm Gail Nowak. I'm based in Beverly, Massachusetts. It's such an honor to be on the panel and be with all of you today. As a word nerd, I love that we're talking about words and energy and intention today. We'll dive more into that. I am a transformational visibility coach. I work with healers and coaches and new earth leaders to help them freely and openly express who they truly are so that they can uplift humanity with their own unique magic. So there's a lot in my work that has to do with using words and using words with intention. So I'm super excited for our conversation today.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Gail. And last but by no means least, Sarah, please introduce yourself and tell the folks a little bit about you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Jane, or Sarah. I am very happy to be called Sarah. I'm in the UK, on the south coast, in a little place, well, not so little actually, called Bournemouth, just along the coast from Southampton, where the Titanic sailed from. I'm a complementary health therapist. That's the title I have. I mainly work with energy, so with Reiki, with sound energy. The sound is voice. And although it's toning, yes, sometimes words do come into that. It's just a complete channeling. I say sometimes words come into it. Actually, because I channel from the mythical beings and dragons, and an awful lot of words come into my work. And I'm also the founder of Gift of Healing TV. And I love helping people to share their gifts, their wisdom, their knowledge, their experiences, just as this program does, helping other people sort of realize that they can do it. We've all done it. They can do it. Our stories are, I think, what helps people. Those words, those feelings, those emotions, they can really help anybody out there who chooses to listen, to step forward into their own power.
Well, thank you, Sarah, and I'm so glad that all of you are here today. It's just a pleasure to be able to do this with you. I think we talk about soul empowerment, and I think I've explained this before in maybe I don't know quite a few episodes back. To me, it's not really. It's a bit of a misnomer to talk about soul empowerment. It's really more accurate to talk about ego disempowerment, or not so much disempowerment, but taming, quieting, um, not controlling so much as getting the ego to be more of a support uh, element in our lives rather than the controlling element in our lives. And when we do that, then what happens is the power of our soul becomes more easily accessible. And so that's really what we're talking about here. And one of the things that the ego does is it yammers and chatters and yells and screams and uses all kinds of words and phrases in our minds to invoke fear, to get us to behave in certain ways, and so forth and so on. And all of that, of course, is based on conditioning from, uh, earlier in this life and maybe even past lives. So we're talking today about this idea of words, and we chose the title Sticks and Stones because so many people are familiar with that phrase. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. And the question that we want to ask is, well, is that really true? I mean, sure, we know that sticks and stones can break our bones, but let's look at the other half of that statement. Is it true that names will never hurt me, that words will never hurt me? Well, that's what we're here to talk about today. And I think both Sarah and Gail talked about the power of words, but Gail, you mentioned being a word nerd. I kind of like that phrase. You haven't used that one before, I don't think. So tell us a little bit about what this means to you. What is so important about words?
Oh, great question. So, from my perspective, I have always, even I can remember as just a very young child. Um, Not that this is probably unique to me, but really, story was just such a prominent, um, lovely experience and memory from my childhood. And I actually received like a lot of storytelling by going to church. I've since, I have different opinions about religion now. And I had the fortunate experience of going to Sunday school and going to church on a regular basis, and it being a beautiful experience of learning about those concepts through story. I just happened to have like this masterful pastor who was a wonderful storyteller. And even when I was in, I guess, elementary school, fourth, fifth grade, I started writing. And writing has just been a part of the way I communicate. I mean, it's everybody communicates with writing, right? But it's just been one of those abilities that has probably been God given to me.
Mhm.
Um, so I love a good turn of phrase. I love metaphor. I love storytelling. I happen to be pretty intellectual as well. And so just everything about reading and writing and communicating and speaking, even as a child, I was the one in my youth group or in the church or in the school that was asked to speak in front of people. So there was something about communication and words that I had come into this earth with an ability around, even though I didn't quite make that connection at the time. I was always kind of like, why are they keep picking me?
Right.
So there was an interest there, but there was also an ability there that I later honed in high school and college, and then into adulthood. So yeah, I mean, I think it's probably not so much word nerd from the sense of, oh, I'm going to really be on you for correct pronunciation. I actually like breaking a lot of grammar rules. um, I sometimes am not like necessarily as intentional with my words as I would like to be. And I also feel like, it's just one of those skills that you need and always have the opportunity to use and always have the opportunity to hone. So it's about learning, but it's also about putting it into practice, and
Yeah.
it's about refining it and tending to it versus, getting it right or getting it perfect.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you. Well, I have to say, word nerd is a little bit of a more, shall we say, compassionate and graceful term than what I was often called, which was a grammar Nazi. But some sometimes it really is a situation or a condition where, I mean, when I was being called that, obviously it was because my ego was coming out, and I was using that ego-based energy to try and correct word phrases and stuff like that. I haven't been called that name in many, many years. Um, but I do resonate with the idea of words and how they're put together, and the meanings of tenses and noun declensions and all that kind of stuff. And I find it very, very fascinating. Scott, I'd like to hear a little bit from you now. What's up for you in this topic area right now?
Well, I kind of suggested it a few things, and through storytelling, as Gail had said, I find that it reaches people when you tell them the story. It gives them the lesson and how you phrase it, what words you use. As a writer, we've all written. You always try to find. There's so many words that mean the same thing, but they all have slightly different connotations. And so when you're trying to paint that picture, you want to get the proper shading, if you will, of what your full meaning is, and to be able to translate that. The ability, and much like you, Gail, through high school and from fourth grade on, I wrote. And I always thought it was amazing that we could take a three-dimensional object, pen and paper, and create emotion from it. And emotion, and we all talked about this, was that words are spells, right? Everything I've learned about witchcraft and all of that and casting spells is you have to have the proper on point pronunciation, and everything have to be exact in order to do it. Well, we should bring that into everyday speech. When I was growing up, we all can tell stories of growing up and being called names, and it's somebody say, "Oh, well, you're a brat." Well, sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Meaning, nah, I'm tough. You can't hurt me. But it's when the phrase, and I use this word as an example, stupid. Well, that was stupid. Well, my parents might have been saying, what you did was really, really bad. It was stupid. Why you put no thought into it. But what I heard was, you are stupid.
Right.
So when I was raising my daughters, I never wanted to use that word. So I'd say, oh, that was pretty silly. Now, that was a different connotation, meaning, well, you probably didn't do that right, and probably could have done it better, but it was, it probably wasn't the best way to do it. And I didn't want to give them that there was that harshness to it, and try to be a little bit more compassionate about how he did it. And so I'd say, you're being silly. And they kind of, when you say silly, they kind of laughed, and that was fine. And so they didn't take that, right to heart, but it allowed them to make mistakes, to be able to, without being judged. And I found and realized, as becoming a parent, that I was judged constantly by my parents, by my family. Being the oldest, you're constantly under scrutiny. I was always the one that was being grounded in the bedroom, right? I was the oldest of four, but my time accumulated in the bedroom being grounded was 5 times what the 3 of them put together was, because I was always being punished for something.
Yeah.
So that responsibility, and so the words and how the intonation and the meaning of them really were powerful for me.
Yeah. That's really great. And as you talk about, the stupid, the silly, I think we've all heard messages like that from our parents or from other people in our lives. My mom's favorite statement was, "Oh, don't be ridiculous. Don't be ridiculous." And of course, when I was young, I had no idea what ridiculous meant, but I knew that it was bad. And I knew that my mom was in her own way disapproving of something that I did. And of course, approval is everything to a kid, right? That's what we want. Another thing that she would say occasionally would be, "Where do you get such stupid ideas or such ridiculous ideas?" So she wasn't saying you are stupid. But she was saying, where do you get these crazy, ridiculous, stupid ideas? And I was saying, oh, I must be stupid. That's how those words impacted me. And I suspect that other people have had similar reactions. It's not so much necessarily what the actual words were directed at us, although some of us have probably been verbally and physically abused and emotionally abused uh, in an explicit manner. But more often than not, it's much more subtle than that. Parents, I think most parents, I will say, don't go out of their way to deliberately hurt their kids. They do it anyway, but it's not necessarily deliberate. It's just, something else is going on. And anyway, I'm going to give Sarah, I want to give you a chance to speak because I know you got a lot to say about this. So why don't you go ahead and share your perspective?
I'm going to start by saying I was lousy at English at school. English language, I could never get my head around it. I learned how to speak it. That was all I needed to know. And as for grammar, I just could not get my head round grammar at all. Period. So got 3 people here who were really good at it, and me, I was totally useless at it. In fact, I failed my English language O-level the first time. I did manage to get it the second time. That is how bad I was at English. But I don't think I speak English badly. But I just don't have an understanding of the construction of sentences and what each little bit is or means or whatever. But isn't it great that we all do come from different perspectives, different understandings? And I don't remember words like stupid and pathetic and whatever. Maybe because by the time I was a certain age, I got into the thing with I'm a waste of space anyway, so I couldn't see the point of remembering anything. My memories of childhood, but it will go back to a word, and it will go back to a name. I don't know whether I've shared this here before, but I had a nickname, and that nickname was Picklepuss. Don't ask me how, what, where, when, why, but it was Picklepuss. But that could also be shortened to pickle. But there is a saying, oh, that is picklish. You are being a pickle. And I can imagine that at some stage I did something that made people laugh, but they turned around and told me I was being picklish or being a pickle. Bearing in mind my nickname, I can take on board that I felt, oh, good, I've made people laugh, especially as I was feeling hugely insecure anyway. But what they were meaning is, that's not good. But because they were laughing, it was an acceptance. And you've been accepted, so you do it again. And the laughter slowly stops, and the tone of voice changes. And I've gone from feeling it was okay to be me to feeling it was not okay to be me. Don't be such a pickle. That is so picklish. It's not necessarily the words, but the tone of voice that is used with those words.
Correct. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And as a really young child, it really isn't about ego, other than the fact the ego starts kicking in with protection.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the protection comes in. And if we can, I think about our ego mind, the way it works, the fact that it is a protector, where does it stem back to? If we can help ourselves, and having come to that understanding of this is probably what happened, because I know my parents used that term picklish, pickle, whatever, for naughty. Which, like you were saying, it's a much gentler word than stupid and naughty and whatever. But it isn't when it relates to a nickname you've got.
Right.
You've gone from being hopefully maybe something that is a little caring to being something that was just absolutely, it's absolutely not okay to be yourself. You can't be you. And I really get that, and I think all of you get that too. So it is, sticks and stones may break my bones. Names will never hurt me physically, but they will hurt me emotionally, mentally. And they can do a massive amount of damage, especially in children. So as an adult, no, we learn that things like that are usually other people's stuff. But it's supporting us to heal the child so that as an adult, we aren't affected by words and our understanding and our perception to their meaning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful. So there's just so much to cover here. But the way I want to start as we get into this is I want to just point out, imagine any word of your choice written on a piece of paper. And there's nothing else on that piece of paper. Now, focus your attention on, let's say, the first letter of that word. I don't care what that word is. What does that letter mean? Doesn't mean anything, does it? It's a symbol. That's all it is. It's a symbol. And it doesn't mean anything. The second letter of the word doesn't mean anything. The third letter of the word, however many letters there are, each individual letter has zero meaning in itself. And then, of course, then we put them all together. We say, oh, this has meaning. This word means X, Y, and Z. Well, why? Well, it means that because collectively, as a culture, we have agreed that that's what that combination of letters means. Right? Now, the word has a meaning, so, right? But it has no emotion specifically tied to it. It's not until the word itself is spoken, and spoken in a particular way, I would say, that it starts to have some kind of an emotional energy associated with it, right? So even if you saw a terrible phrase, something that your parents said to you as a child, you are stupid. If you see those words, you are stupid, written on the page, there's really no emotion there, is there? But you may have an emotional reaction because of the memory associated with hearing that phrase from your mom or your dad or somebody else in your life. This is what I'm talking about here. The words themselves they're just symbols. They're just placeholders for energy. That's all they are. But think about this. How many dogs or cats do you know that understand English or any other language for that matter? But they sure understand your emotional energy, don't they? So if I start yelling at my dog, he's going to probably shrink down and kind of try and hide himself. But if I'm there playfully and I'm using exactly the same words in every case, he doesn't care about the words. He cares about the energy. And that's what I think we're really talking about here is the energy that we share with each other, the way we put it out. I mean, we can all tell when the energy coming towards us is loving, compassionate, forgiving, grateful, and we can tell when it's intended to be harmful, hurtful, it's intended to wound us. We can tell the difference even without the words. The words just help to, focus someone's energy. That's what they're really there for. So that's how I see it. I don't know, maybe you agree, maybe you don't agree, but I saw some nodding as I was speaking. So I'm just going to leave it there and open up the conversation. Whoever wants to speak, please jump in.
I love that you brought up the animals. I was actually at the vet today with my cat, and she's pretty good at the vet anyway. She's a little passive which is a good thing. I've had a cat that was practically feral at the vet. So it's nice to have one that cries a little, doesn't want to be there, and she's getting poked and prodded and everything, but the doctor and the vet tech just loving her up through the whole process. And my cat isn't super sociable, but she was just snuggling right into the vet tech. And I totally get what you're saying about the energy and the intention, and they understand, animals, humans, you can feel the energy behind what's being expressed. You can feel it before it's being expressed. I mean, I don't know about you
That's
guys,
right.
but I have definitely been in situations where somebody's coming into a room or is coming into my awareness, and I can feel them coming a mile away before they show up. And many times it's been the case that I could feel the intensity of them. And I would look to the person who was with me and I would say, "Oh, she's looking for a fight." Like I could just tell, because the energy leads. So whatever is coming out of your mouth is going to likely match up with whatever energy that you're in. So I definitely agree with that, David.
Yeah. God, go ahead.
So the energy, everything that we talk about, it apparently comes back to energy, which I think is really interesting. We all deal with energy in one manner or another. So I wanted to throw out a word, and it holds massive meaning for so many people in so many different ways. Love. Now I tell my mother that I love her. There is that that connection that we have. I tell my daughters how much I love them. I tell my grandchildren how much I love them. I tell my friends, male friends, it's gotten to that point where we can do this, and I let them know that I love them. And I tell many people around me how much, and I express it so that they fully understand it. When I was a teenager, you think of love and it's got different connotations all over the map and different emotions all over the map. But now it comes from a very different place. It's the same word, but it means something very, very different all the way down the line. Because exactly what you said, Gail, is just that intention, how you mean it, how safe people feel with that word. And in writing, when we write for a large audience, you never quite know how people are going to take those words. We've had many discussions on, well, maybe we should say this and maybe we should say that. And what if we do say that? And how are people going to react to it? Well, we can't predict how people will react, but we know what our intention is all the way down the line.
Mm-hmm.
We could swear our heads off here. People might be shocked. Other people might listen more. Not sure. Sometimes you got to, with friends of mine, you got to hit them upside the head with a few swears before they'll even pay attention to you.
Right.
The use of the word, it's the use of that meaning, and fully the intention. So it comes back to that always, that intention and how we speak. And David, I know, and Gail, both of you with the words, I used to be that way about the meaning and precision and the construction and everything else. And now when I read because I want to understand what the intention is, not necessarily the construction. Haikus.
Right.
Haikus going around right now. And there is some incredible mastery of that simple, simplistic structure in haiku that paints an incredible picture. And there is precision in words, but with full meaning, and it gives it across. It really. So I'm going to caution people always make sure people understand your intention. You may not say the exact right word, and I know I've gotten in trouble saying the wrong thing at the wrong time more than once. I kicked under the table a few times. But just being able to relate your intention, I think that's what we do. That's what we use words for.
Right. Well, I think that, there's a lot of what you're saying there just resonates with me. And one belief I have about communication is this. As long as I speak from I statements and from my own personal experience, I have much less likelihood of hurting anybody else. If I talk only about my own experience, when I say you should, or if you do this, blah, 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 that now I'm not speaking from I statements anymore. If I want to suggest something to you, for example, instead of saying, well, why don't you try X, Y, or Z? I might say instead, Scott, I had a similar problem like 5 years ago, and I tried X. I don't know, maybe you might want to check it out. I kind of try and leave it that way so that you don't feel like I'm telling you what to do. Or, I mean, maybe you still feel like I'm telling you what to do because maybe you got manipulated a lot when you were a kid. I don't know. But I'm trying to reduce the likelihood of that simply by owning my own experience. And I think if we can all do that, in fact, we might want to have a whole conversation about that topic all by itself. It's something about I statements and self-responsible communication that helps to reduce conflict. It's a really powerful way of doing it. So I'm sorry, Sarah, I didn't give you a chance to jump in there. So why don't you go ahead and share your perspective on this?
I think with words, with what you were saying, David, what I tend to do is I tend to say to people, I've got a suggestion for you. This is something that has worked for me. And it was years ago when I sort of first started this journey and understood that things hadn't been the way they should be, and why I'd been, and wanting to know why I'd been how it was, the way I'd been, and acted the way I'd been, and reacted the way I had. And I went to see a psychotherapist. And one day she actually turned around and said, here, take my advice, I'm not using it.
Yeah, right.
That word advice, you are
Here, take my advice, I'm not using it. I love it.
Yeah. Oh, and it stuck. It absolutely stuck with me. And it was just like, and you said, because we are all very good at giving other people advice, but not taking our own advice.
Yeah, right. I'm
You know,
not using
sort
it.
of-
That's so good.
And it's one of those things that has happened in my life that has really stuck with me. And it's just I do not give advice. In fact, when I make a suggestion to a client, usually to a client, I then go and forget what I've said to them. Because for me, when I make a suggestion, give a thought to somebody, it's very much a matter of it's your choice what you do with it. You can stick it in file 13, and for those who don't understand what I mean, that's the bin. Or you can do something with it. You can investigate it. You can use bits of it or none of it. Do as you choose. And by forgetting what I've said to people, and only today somebody came back and said, thank you for what you said. And I'm thinking, what the heck did I say? Because by forgetting, I am giving them total freedom to do with it as they choose. I'm not
Exactly right.
holding on to any energy. So my intention is their highest good, whatever they feel is right for them. Going back to words and their meanings, I think we all have to realise that one word can mean the same thing to an awful lot of people. And I've said this before, the word service bugs the hell out of me because I've been a waitress, I've worked in pubs, I've done chambermaiding, I've done those jobs where you are doing things for people and they're referred to as service. I am not here to do anything for anyone. I am here to offer energies, to support them, to help themselves. The true meaning of the word charity isn't that you are given something, that people do things for you. It is the true meaning of the word charity is that people support you to be able to support yourself to get you out of that situation. So there's that thing, isn't there? Give a man a fish, he eats for a day. Give him a fishing rod, he not only feeds himself every day, but he can help feed others as well. And maybe even earn a living. So is that the charity, the true charity is the fishing rod. The giving him of the fish isn't particularly charity because he's still in the same position at the end of the day.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's thinking about what words really mean. And I know I'm probably in the minority about that word service, but it isn't a word that resonates with me. But I have this conversation with my youngest sister. She loves that word. But
Well, that's interesting. You know, I guess there are words that some of us just don't like, no matter what the intention is behind them. You know, that's like, all right, I don't happen to like, I don't know, fried liver. You know, it really is not my cup of tea. Well, it isn't a cup of tea anyway, but you know what I mean. We all have our preferences, that's for sure. And this is not to say that liver is bad. It's just that I don't like it, right? So, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That's really important, I think. And you know, I was thinking more about what we've been talking about here and this idea of words and Gail, when you were talking about feeling the energy coming at you before you even see the person in the room, I don't know, I had this image show up in my mind of back in the 60s or 70s when the hippies were doing their thing and they were, you know, protesting everywhere. And I remember there was one photograph of a whole bunch of, I think they were police or maybe they were military or National Guard or whatever. And this one hippie girl puts a flower in the muzzle of this guy's rifle. And I thought, that is a powerful, powerful image right there. And what's coming up for me right now is as you're talking about someone approaching you with this energy of maybe a militaristic energy, an energy of going to beat you down. What if you just had a flower right there and you were ready to offer it to them in that moment? How quickly could we? It doesn't have to be a physical flower. You know, maybe you just manifest a flower in your mind and you just have that there and you somehow project that energy out no matter what's coming towards you. I'm thinking about this now in terms of how I can respond to people who are obviously approaching me with an antagonistic attitude. Because I tend to go into, you know, defensive mode, and my defense is generally pretty offensive. You know what I mean? So that's because my ego gets activated, and I really have a hard time controlling it. If I could remember to bring that flower into my awareness and just bring it forward somehow, even if it's just energetically, I could do a huge amount to disarm and reduce the energy of that encounter. Mostly because I'm not being so defensive anymore, not necessarily altering the other person's energy. So I'm glad you brought that up because it just, wow, that was a huge remembrance for me. You know, it's kind of like the same idea with that guy in Tiananmen Square who stopped the tank. That, I mean, amazing, amazing things that people can do with simple, simple gestures. And I bet both of those people probably really didn't think about it in the moment that they were doing it. They just felt the energy and did it. Anyway, I just wanted to say that. So thanks for bringing it up.
I feel like that's, that's the power, going back to Scott and that word of love, like that's the power of love. That's the power of compassion to be able to dissipate. Like, and that's being able to stand in your truth and in your power. right? Because how many, so David, you were talking about how you can kind of go into the fight mode, right? Defensive, offensive. Um, I'm thinking back on that particular time that I just brought up, and I went into fear, So I was like, I don't want to be anywhere around this. And so I think that people think about Tiananmen Square. I don't know if they think about this necessarily with the flower. Like they might maybe equate that to courage, but hearing you talk about it, it very clearly came to me as like that's being able to see through that hurt, antagonized, stressed energy and into the heart of the other person, and to really just sit and be in that. Like that's incredible. That's so powerful and so potent
Mhm.
to meet that kind of energy with such a presence, and with such compassion. I think it takes more than courage. I think it really, there's something very divine about that, in my opinion.
Right. You know, getting back to that hippie girl putting the flower in the muzzle, there's a subtext on that image that I don't know that I really realized it until just now as you were reflecting it back to me. I think that there was a way in which she was saying, "What if you were shooting flowers instead of bullets?" That I mean, that blew me away. What if we all could shoot flowers instead of bullets? Or if someone's shooting bullets at us, we learn to shoot flowers, turn them into flowers and send them back. This is something that Tommy Stoffel said to me once. When the arrows come towards you, can you reflect them back as flowers of love and peace? That's really I think what our goal is here. And I think when a stick or a stone comes to me, then I somehow transmute it into some representation of unconditional love.
How do we speak in those terms always? Unconditional love. We're always trying to transcend to that, yes, to ascend to that, to be able to do, Buddha, who is, the essence of really unconditional being. How do we do that? Translate that each and every time we walk in to a room, every time we have a conversation. How do we do that? Well, for me and you, we're kind of limited. We're human. We have emotions. We might be hungry. We might just have driven 17 miles or 17 hours and are just dog tired and just really aren't in the best of shape. But we all know people who can hold that. I visited a young lady who just turned 89 at a nursing home, and she has the most amazing ability to make me feel special by coming to see her. She just takes it as wherever she is or whatever is happening, she takes it with grace. She takes it with love. And I'm thinking, if I'm in that bed and I can't move, and I know I'm getting to the last years of my life or the last months of my life, I might be bitter. I might, not find gratitude in the things that are around me. But in the smallest gestures, she takes such gratitude, such love, and the way that she speaks lets you know that she really appreciates you being there. And I find that such a gift, and to be able to speak in that way of just loving kindness and acceptance. And I find that, throughout my life, people have viewed that as weak. Oh, you're vulnerable, so you're weak. You're, you don't want to fight, so therefore you're weak.
Mm-hmm.
I think it takes more strength to maintain that integrity of unconditional love, of compassion, of being right there than it does anything else. And being able to speak in that language of unconditional love, without judgment.
Well, you asked the question, and I think it's a really good question to ask, is how can I come from a place of unconditional love when I'm faced with unpleasant circumstances? And I think that you kind of answered the question yourself. But I would certainly like to reiterate this, because maybe what we need to do as a collective, as a society, as whatever, is to start learning how to come from a place of unconditional love when there is no opposition, when there is no unpleasantness going on around us. If we could develop a practice, no matter what we are about to do, of just inviting in unconditional love and just doing that on a conscious, continuous, regular basis, then when the unpleasant situation shows up, we'll still be thinking in that way and we'll be less likely to slip into the ego. So I think it's a conscious and consistent practice of inviting, welcoming, and sharing unconditional love in every single moment. You know, I remember, didn't we have an episode not too long ago called "What Would Love Do Now"? Well, that was really what we were talking about, and let's reiterate that right now. Maybe that's the question I can ask. What would love do now? Maybe I should be asking that in every single moment of my life. I don't know. What do you think?
How do we express it? How do we express that love in that moment? Even, and also it's practice, David, right? Because if we're doing it all the time, then when the hard times come,
it gets easier, yeah.
And it's muscle memory, it's emotional memory, it's that strength that we have of repetitiveness. So we can use those same terms, so we can use those same words, so that in good times, bad times, we're presenting and coming forward with that same energy.
Yeah, right.
I think it's very important for us to remember we're here having a human experience. That includes every single emotion. And maybe we go back to that word forgiveness, because it is okay for us to have those feelings. It's just not holding on to them. Literally earlier this week, Monday, I went for a walk, and there's a set of traffic lights, so I can literally cross the road and into the woods, which is something I love doing. Being able to go walk in the woods is brilliant. And the lights went red, and this car shot across the red light. And it's just like, the immediate reaction is, idiot, or something like that, you know. So, but then I go into, let it go. Release to the light with love. Light, peace, and love. And it's just that I allow myself the humanness. And I think it's important for us to allow ourselves that humanness. And not to berate ourselves, not to think we can't do it. Because we're meant to, I believe. It's just, do we hold on to it? Does it become all-consuming? And that's the important thing, is, you know, it's practice. And it is, you know, out driving. Oh, the driving's got appalling. It really has. I'm beginning to wonder whether people have forgotten what they've learned when they passed the driving test, because it's diabolical since COVID. It really is. You know, you're trying to do what you should, remembering to indicate, etc. And you've got people cutting you up and pulling out and goodness knows what else. And it's just like, yes, I allow myself to go into that. And then it's just like, right, let go. It's light.
Right.
Release to the light with love. And so, yes, that's a habit I've got into. Because it doesn't help me to hold on to that negative energy. But
Right.
do you know what? I am here to have a human experience. Therefore, it is important that I continue to have those human experiences to keep me grounded here. Because if we lose our ability to understand what others are going through, how are we going to support them? So allowing our humanness, for me, is really important. But we can, most of the time, transcend that.
Yeah, I think you got a couple of good points here, and I mean, I don't think anybody was saying that we should stop people from behaving the way they behave. I mean, that's not what we're talking about here. I think what we're really talking about is my responsibility. I believe, even though you're right, I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. My responsibility is my part of what I'm here to do is to take full responsibility for everything that I experience in my life. That means that when I do have, let's say, an unpleasant emotional experience of some kind, I don't want to talk about a bad experience or anything, but something that gets me activated in a way that I don't particularly like anymore. Now, I'm not going to berate myself. I'm not saying that we should do that. What I am saying is, I know that those situations are going to happen because I can't control anything about how other people behave. So when they do happen, I want to be prepared by trying to have love available to me right now. So that when it arrives, when the unpleasantness arrives, I can still try and stay in that place of love. I'm not saying I'll never react, and I'm not saying that anybody should berate him or herself if that happens. I'm only saying that let's learn how to bring unconditional love into everything we do and to direct it back to ourselves in the form of forgiveness if we do happen to do something that we find ourselves berating ourselves for. You know what I mean? So this is really about transforming those sticks and stones into flowers of love. And at the same time, trying not to shoot sticks and stones towards other people. That's what I think my job is. And that's what I think we're trying to help people learn how to do here. So I just want to keep it that, excuse me. I want to keep it at that and maybe talk about any other ways that you can think of for helping people to deal with the sticks and stones that come their way and to maybe not use so many sticks and stones in their own behavior. That's what I'm trying to get us to here before we close out.
So driving, Sarah, I love that you brought that up. So the things that I say while I'm driving by myself about judging other drivers and their ineptness, because of course no one can drive as well as I can on the road.
That's right.
I then have to forgive myself for being that judgmental.
Yeah.
And so yes, I take driving as a separate entity. I was a salesman on the road for 25 years and driven over 1.5 million miles and have seen a lot of stuff, and I just still shake my head. But yes, I absolutely agree with you, David. How do we turn that around? Well, being less judgmental. And so I do that in all aspects of my life. My biggest challenge is when I'm behind the wheel of the car.
I just want to piggyback on the unconditional love and also some of what Sarah was saying. I think that sometimes when we think of unconditional love, we're thinking of it as gentle and meek. And I think that we absolutely can be firm and clear and fair
And
and
fierce.
feeling our feelings and still be in unconditional love. I recently had an experience of what that's actually like versus being reactive and judgmental. and you will know. You will know the difference when you are like David said, like when you start to make this a practice in your life, when you start to invite this in, when you are saying, what would love do in this moment? And sometimes you don't, um, when you're in those unwanted situations, chances are you're not going to be asking that question because you're under duress. So I love this idea of doing the practice when you're not, because then it just kicks in, right? It
Right.
just kicks in and you will feel the difference. I was astounded. I didn't like the situation. I didn't like what happened. And I can sit here today and say, I absolutely showed up in unconditional love for myself, for the other people involved. I felt grounded. I had all kinds of opinions after and did all kinds of venting after, because you're right, Sarah, right? We're meant to feel all of it and embrace all of it. And we're not meant to hold on to it. We're meant to move those emotions out of our system. It's uh, emotions, energy, emotion, right? So I think that sometimes, I know this was true for me for a long time, where I did think like, oh, that's weak, you know, unconditional love, or being vulnerable, like that's weakness. No, it actually takes quite a bit of practice and presence and strength to be in that kind of energy on a regular basis.
Right. I think I'm glad you said what you said about love. Um, I think that unconditional love can coexist with anger, especially
Mhm.
righteous anger. When
Yeah.
if somebody is threatening you or threatening someone you love, it's it's going to be love that propels you to protect and defend that person or yourself. And anger will help you to get the energy you need in order to be able to do what's necessary to complete that defense, even if it means dispatching the other person, shall we say. You know, I I loathe the idea of hurting someone or killing someone, heaven forbid. But when push comes to shove, I'm not going to hesitate if I'm protecting my loved ones. Now that doesn't mean, I mean, I joined the military, and I joined the military for all the wrong reasons as far as I'm concerned. I did it as part of, my service to my country and stuff. But I remember I was a fighter pilot, and I remember one of the trainings that we had to do, I had to learn how to drop bombs. And I remember doing this and thinking, wow, is this something I really want to be doing? Now, I was only 26 or so at the time, but that was the first time I really thought about what I was doing. And I had already been in the military for 6 years at that point. And I'm thinking, wow, is this what I really want to be doing? God forbid we should ever go to war and I have to drop bombs on somebody. So I found, a way to get into a different part of the military that wouldn't necessarily be dropping bombs. I might be firing missiles at an enemy aircraft, but I wouldn't be dropping bombs on the ground with the chance of killing innocent people. So, we all have our own level of awareness and what we think is right and wrong and what's consistent with who we really are and so forth. I'm glad I had the experience of the military because it woke me up to certain things. I'm also glad that I didn't stay. I'm glad that I got out when I did. So every experience that we have is an opportunity for us to understand more deeply who we really are. So I say, take every experience and use it to the maximum extent possible. Sarah, I know you got to get going. Do you want to say something before you leave?
Just thank you to all of you. The way that we all share from our own unique experiences and understandings, that we can touch so many more lives than just one of us on our own. These conversations mean so much. And I know they will touch lives, and the joy is that the recordings are always available. So thank you to each and every one of you for the love, the support, the care that you put out there to everybody. And I'll see you again soon. Tatty bye, folks.
Thank you, Sarah. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
So, Dale, Scott, would either of you like to say any final words before I close out today?
I love this idea that you put forth, David, of turning, transmuting those sticks and stones into flower or love, or whatever it is that feels good and loving and compassionate, and being able to, I feel like there, energy wise, it's like being able to, if somebody is coming at you aggressively, or maybe isn't meeting a specific need or want that you have, is really just taking the time to allow whatever comes up to come up, because your ego will have an opinion about it, right? And you will have a feeling about it, but to just take a moment and see that person and challenge your own assumptions about what's going on, because most of the time it really has nothing to do with us personally. It has to do with what is going on with the individual before us. There's and to choose your words carefully, not to betray yourself by any means, not a proponent of that, but to choose your words carefully in a situation like that. And then also to, even when you're enjoying someone's company or you're having a good time, to not be afraid to express that. I think that that's the other side of this coin, is that I love, Scott, that you shared that you're telling your family, you're telling your friends, you probably say it to colleagues too. It's like, why do we hold back so much, letting people know, geez, I really appreciate you, or I love you, or I love when you do this. Like, we need to, I feel like it's a simple thing to do, and for some reason we struggle with it. And I feel like so much could be healed when we're choosing those true and loving words with each other, no matter what the situation is.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Scott.
Wow. So with all of that having been said, we turning that around, and I find that gratitude is really kind of the tool that I use when I go to speak with people, and I'm truly listening. Instead of listening to respond, I take a breath. That one breath, because I was always the automatic response guy, right? So now I take a breath before I speak, and all of a sudden, instead of just out of my heart and out of my throat, it comes from my heart, and it gives a chance for it to kick in, and the words come out differently, and the intention comes out differently. So a tool that people can use is just a breath.
A breath of gratitude. Well, beautiful, everybody. Thank you so much for sharing your perspectives. I think we've done a pretty good job on discussing this whole topic and talking about how to try and stay in that place of love, even when some of the energy coming at us isn't all that pleasant. And I just want to welcome people to watch the videos, check out all the other shows that we've done. You can find them all on my website at yourlifemasterycoach.com. And remember to come back and join us next time for episode 44. And I don't know what the topic will be, but it's going to be another great topic with these great people. So hope you'll join us. Bye-bye.